Cool. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name's Cassie. I'm a Mariano's tastemaker, and I just found out today is our very last Women in Wine History Month event. I'm kind of sad. It's so bittersweet. We've had such a wonderful month full of incredible events, but we have one last great interview, and I'm so excited to have Megan McCollough from Smith & Hook with me. And we have in our glasses, for those of you who just tuned in, we have the Smith & Hook Cabernet from the Central Coast 2018. And Megan, before we even get into the wine, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Cassie and Sarah, Amanda, Clayton, Marianos for having me. I can see some of your faces. This is really cool. The question popped up, where's everybody from? I am from Lockwood, California. So Central Coast, California, population 400. Yes, 400
okay, for
is where
us that don't know where that is, what's the next biggest city that if we can like put it into perspective?
So Central Coast is smack dab in the middle of San Francisco and LA. So
okay,
a few hours from each of those, about 3. And that's where a beautiful wine country is. So yeah, I got started with wine, working in a tasting room, dabbling in that, and sought out a minor in wine and viticulture at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And then I found myself working for a custom crush facility in my hometown, which I didn't even know existed there until after I graduated college. So that was pretty eye-opening. But I spent 2 harvests there just grinding away. I did a lot of tank fermentations. I did a lot of lab work. It was really tough to crush, to just go right in from college to that kind of job. But it was also eye-opening and super great. And I learned so much. It was really fun. So from there, I sought out a job at Hahn Family Wines, and I started off as their enologist almost 10 years ago. Hahn is located in Soledad, California. So just shy of the Monterey Bay, not too far from there. Yeah, and so more experience again, like working with fermentations and out in the cellar, just getting dirty and learning about the different wines here. And then from there, I moved into the assistant winemaking position, and that was a grind too, really fun. And that was more, I would say, experience with winemaking. I worked more closely with my boss, Paul. And then a couple years ago, I was promoted to winemaker for Smith & Hook. So yeah, I haven't looked for a job in 10 years, which is pretty awesome to say.
That is really incredible.
Yeah.
So did you know when you were in a tasting room that you were going to eventually follow the path into winemaking, or did it kind of inherently happen? How does that happen?
It's funny you ask. It all just kind of fell into pieces and place. No, I didn't know I wanted to be a winemaker. I liked wine, and I knew that wherever wine grew was a pretty cool spot to live. You know, whether you went up north to Napa, went to the Central Valley or Paso Robles region, it was a good vibe. So that's kind of what I was after, was a good place to live. And yeah, it just all kind of fell into place. Like I said, I got this job with a custom crush facility in my hometown, and the rest is history. So yeah, I didn't expect to be a winemaker out of college per se. I wasn't sure if I was going to go to the vineyard side of things. So
sometimes things just fall into place that way.
Yeah.
So we talked about it briefly earlier, but I think people are kind of talking about it in the comments. But explain Hahn. We were talking about it, and Smith & Hook, and what is the relationship between the two?
Yeah, so about 40 years ago, Nikki Hahn sought out this property. which is his last name, Hahn, which is means German or means means rooster in German. Hahn does. Let's clear that up. And he sought out this property, and he thought it was a good spot to plant grapes. At the time, it was a horse and cattle ranch, which is where the name Smith and Hook come from, because those were the families that owned the property before Nicky Hahn did. So at that time, there was a ton of Cabernet Sauvignon planted throughout this Central Coast region, specifically in the Santa Lucia Highlands, which is where the winery Hahn is at. But, you know, through trial and error and a lot of grape growing and winemaking, we decided, and a lot of other growers decided, that Cab didn't grow very well in this milder climate, like warm to mild. And that's why Hahn Family Wine sought out other sources for the grapes. We sought out hotter climates, looking for family owned, trying to stick with long-standing relationships and growers alike. So this whole region got replanted basically to Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So there's still a lot of Cab around, but those are in the hotter climates. So
amazing.
Yeah.
You were showing me the bottle that you have from, what was it, 1985? I have to see it again, because that is
okay.
pretty
So
incredible.
all right, for everyone, this is our 2018 Smith and Hook Cab, and this is our 1985. I believe it's our first vintage. So pretty cool. Yeah, and so we kept the name Smith and Hook to pay homage to the family that owned this property before us.
So you mentioned that there's Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and then we're obviously tasting the Cabernet, but do you grow any other grape varieties?
We do. Under the umbrella, we grow all sorts, Merlot, Malbec, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Grenache. We did plant some Riesling, and that's on property in the Soledad region. When I talk about Smith and Hook and the vineyards, I'll dive into that a little bit more in the areas. But Central Coast to me is just so like small but big. I don't know. It just has this like.
It's a pretty vast region. Well, and that's the thing too, is I think so many people think of California and they immediately go straight to Napa, or they immediately go to Sonoma. And I think that there's something to be said for the Central Coast and what's being grown, first of all, up and down the coast, and what else is going on in California that's really exciting. So maybe for those people that maybe shed a little bit more light on just the Central Coast in general, for people that may not be as familiar with the region.
I like to tell people we are 4 hours. This actual spot I'm sitting in is 4 hours away from anything you want to do, whether it be a lake, the mountains and snow, the desert, a river, the beach, any type of climate where I'm sitting at, you are 4 hours away from. So we have a lot of microclimates, and I'm sitting smack dab in the middle of one. So yeah, I love California. You know, we really do pay for the weather, but that's okay. So Central Coast, as you're saying, we do have a lot of row crops. We are known as the salad bowl. So a lot of your grocery store items in the produce section come from just down the road. Lettuce, cilantro, zucchini, cucumbers, all that stuff. But yeah, we also grow a lot of wine, and we do it very well here. We aren't Napa, but nor do we strive to be. You know, we are our own entity, and I think we, the growers and viticulturists, all do a really fine job of, you know, taking grape to bottle. So
amazing. Well, let's actually taste some wine and we'll do a little cheers for everybody that has it. And we'll start to
Oh,
talk about this. And then there's some questions in the comments that relate to the wine. So cheers, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Just first of all, let's just talk about this guy, Smith and Hook, our Cabernet 2018. And we have this at all of the Marianos. But yeah, let's tell me about this wine. How did it come to be? And then we'll talk a little bit about what it tastes and smells like.
alrighty. Super fun to make. I will start off by saying that a lot goes into this wine. And what's unique about this 100% Cabernet is that we don't source from just one area specifically. And I actually have a map that I might show you. So these are all different regions in the Paso Robles area, and that's one of the vineyards that's one of the areas that we source from. So that map I just showed you shows 11 different districts. And we, Smith and Hook has 3 of those vineyards sites. But in total, there's 5 different appellations that make up this wine. So that's why you find a lot of different layers. On the nose, it's very much that dark cherry, a lot of baked cherry, some saddle, leather, but a lot of layers go into this. It's not too upfront with one particular characteristic.
I really like the balance. It has all the fruit character and it has the structure, and not one thing overpowers the other. And maybe that's from all the sourcing from all the different locations, is you can kind of customize how you want the wine to be overall balanced, right?
Yeah. On the palate, there's a lot of vanilla. There's a lot of mocha notes, with a subtle spice to it. I don't know what you guys are picking up. Feel free to write the comments or whatever.
I don't get that deep currant and cassis, those typical Cabernet descriptors, but they're so prominent here. But you just described a bunch of baking spices and vanilla and all that mocha. Does this wine see a little bit of oak as well?
Yeah, so I'll talk about that. So the winemaking style, we've chosen to put it all in barrel. And what's unique about this is there's a small portion that actually gets barrel fermented. But aside from that, about 60% of it sees new French oak. So that's where you'll get your caramel, your vanilla, a little bit of butterscotch, sometimes coconut, cedar, and all the 100% of this is aged in barrel. So that's where the concentration and structure really comes into play throughout the life cycle of this wine. And it's really fun to taste it throughout these 14 months it spends in barrel. You know, it's super young, right after it's fermented, a lot of tannins, a lot of grip, you know, and then through the aging process, it becomes a lot more concentrated, softer tannins, rounder mouth feel. It's really fun to see it develop. And that's what I like most about it. And to speak to those layers, you know, we source from 5 different appellations, and each one of those brings something unique. So for instance, Paso Robles is really heavy on the cherry side of things. Arroyo Seco, which is not far from where I'm sitting right now, provides a lot of structure and backbone. Lockwood, which is San Antonio Valley, that's where I was born and raised, that will give a lot of spice typically. And all these regions are really unique in the sense that we have 50-degree temperature swings. So it gives us a long growing season. And what that means is you could wake up in the morning and it's 50, 60 degrees. And then by, you know, mid-afternoon, it's 100. So pretty incredible. You know, that difference in temperature, but it allows the vines to rest at night and to cool off. Some of the tannins burn off in that process. But yeah, makes for really great growing Cabernet regions.
That's great. John from Facebook asks, can you discuss the style differences between your different Cabernets, so Paso Robles, Central Coast, and Reserve?
Ooh,
Real technical there.
So, yeah, it's a little bit of a winemaking secret, I will say. But the Reserve, to touch on that, is a barrel select version. So I went through and I tasted hundreds of barrels because you do have barrel variation, just like not all apples taste the same. So I went through and I selected the highest quality barrel, the ones that were tasting outstanding and stood apart. And then not only that, I did it within one vineyard. So that was the Reserve. For our Han Cab, we sourced from other vineyards north in the Lodi region, some on Central Coast, and that sees some tank age and oak, whereas this is 100% barrel aged and new French oak.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we obviously have this incredible wine, but this whole event is talking about being a woman in wine. So how do you think, first of all, you talked about how you got into wine. Did you have any female mentors that kind of pushed you into winemaking? Any people that you really looked up to or who have helped you kind of find your way?
Getting into it, it was my brother who got me into actual wine over a conversation with Two Buck Chuck. But when I started here at Han, my boss's wife was working here as a cellar master. And she went in, one day I saw her covered in purple because she overflowed a tank by, it happens. It was a fermentation that just went rampant, but she was never afraid to get in, get dirty, do anything, whether it be like entering work orders in the database or working side by side with any one of the cellar team members. She could carry 50 pounds up a flight of stairs, and she taught me a lot about wine and just to be a go-getter. Her name's Rebecca Clifton. So I have her to thank as being just an awesome spirit. And she always did it with a smile on her face. So yeah.
That's great. I think a lot of times as women, it's you feel like you have to prove yourself and do a lot more, and you have to wear all of these different hats, and you have to do it with grace. And so it is really great to have somebody that loves doing that and to set that example, but also show that, there's a reason why we all are in the industry. It's because we love wine, we love food, we love how the communities interact with each other. And at the end of the day, it's worth that extra mile to be a part of it. Do you think that there's any obstacles that you faced in being a woman in wine?
I don't know if there's necessarily obstacles. I like to come to work and see everybody as equal, no matter what you're doing, and just work side by side with people. There are personality conflicts, but I think being a woman and having that showing more empathy and compassion is something unique. Working with a lot more males, and having that nurturing aspect, taking care of things and, doing it, like you said, with some grace, but also being a go-getter. So yeah, I like to, walk into each day just, wanting to learn something new and to work side by side with everyone here.
That's a great view to have. Well, funny because yesterday we were talking, we had to just kind of touch bases, and you had your baby with you. You want to talk a little bit how it is balancing being a mother and being a winemaker?
Sure. I have two little boys at home. One's 4, one's 18 months old. And I was at home doing the Zoom thing with the little one on my lap. And it is quite the juggle, for those of you moms and dads alike. But getting back into the swing of things, I missed one whole harvest because I had the baby, good timing. I don't know. So finding balance, but it's also pretty cool knowing that you can do it and incorporate your kids into it. Both my kids know what grapes are. They've been to the winery. I've brought them during harvest, and the 4-year-old loves to come here, ride his bike around, and like get dirty with a yeast addition to a tank. So, I like to incorporate them into what I do every day, and they have so much fun with it. But yeah, the balance of things. But we taste wine at home. He knows mommy's a winemaker, and um, it's fun. It's fun.
Is it going to be a family affair, family business?
Maybe one
You
day.
gotta start them young.
Yeah, I hope the boys get into vineyards or winemaking or tractor driving. I don't know. They're very into tractors right now.
One more question from John on Facebook. He says, lots of women are making great wine, and I buy many wines made by them. Do you think there are any consistent traits in wines made by women versus men?
Ooh, I think that would go back to the nurturing and the taking care of. Sometimes I feel a little bit reluctant to maybe release a wine because I want it to be just right, just perfect. Um, I'm not saying that like men tend to just kind of get out there and, um, wash their hands of it or release it too soon. They have really good palates in general, and there's some really awesome. I work side by side with 2 men winemakers. So maybe just being, for me, more hesitant and wanting to make sure that the wine has been nurtured long enough.
Like just the caring too much, perfectionist
Yeah,
consistency,
I
all of those things.
definitely, I tend to take the fermentations like very seriously because that's, aside from grape growing, that's really in the winery where it starts. And if you don't get the fermentation right, man, things can go sour quickly. So it's really important to keep your eye on it.
There's another question on Facebook, and I also want to chime in on this question after you do, but it says, do you feel like you tend to create softer, more elegant wines being a woman versus wines that are masculine, bold, and hitting you over the head with wood, etc., and tannin?
Mm, no, not necessarily. I think each varietal has different qualities, characteristics that are innate, that are born into them. And then just depending on where they're grown and how you ferment them. I wouldn't say that I create more like elegant, softer. I think the varietals tend to speak for themselves more so.
That's what I was going to say. And I think too, based on the last question as well, is it's a team effort. So Megan is the winemaker, but at the same time, there's people in the vineyards that are making sure everything's going on. There's people checking all the fermentations, all the pump overs, all the people, it's not just one person making it, and therefore it's not one person's expression of the wine either. So I think it is kind of fun to talk about what makes a wine more feminine and more masculine, especially working in a restaurant. It's easy to use words like that to kind of inherently talk about a wine, but there's also, it is very much great variety. So we talk about Cabernet. It's going to be hard to, not have tannin. It's just what, just part of the grape variety. So I think there are things that can be done on the winemaking side, like wood and all those. But I would say actually wood makes wine silkier and makes it maybe more like perceived as feminine, and it gives it more of those velvety textures too. So it could be perceived either way. And I think that it's fun to be able to talk about, okay, what is your actual influence, and how does the team make the wine? So what is your most proud moment in your wine career so far?
Okay, so pardon me. The internet was a little bit off, but you said proudest moment in my wine.
Uh-huh. In your wine
Okay.
career.
Okay. The Somm Journal was cool enough, nice enough to work with me on an article on a spread in their magazine. And so that was really fun. Michelle and Jeremy Ball came out here, and we did like some discussions, some tastings, some photo shoots. That was really cool. And, showcase Smith and Hook and this beautiful property. Yeah.
I think being able to show kind of a spotlight on this region, and I think a lot of people know that wine is being grown here, but to actually, put a name to a face, and to be able to have these incredible wines that we see. I just wanted to say that before I got into wine, Han was actually one of my favorite wines to grab at Mariano's. Actually, I used to live right by the Mariano's on Ashland. And that was one of my just easy picks. I knew it was going to be good. It was fruit forward and very easy to drink, but still had a lot of complexity to it. So I'm thrilled to do this interview because brings back nostalgia for me. But yeah, I think to show a little bit about the Central Coast, and to have these incredible wines in front of us is wonderful. Are there any other questions, either on Facebook or through the Zoom, or anything about the wines, or even about any questions for Megan? Megan, anything you want to add?
Oh gosh.
This has been so much fun. Actually, I want a food pairing.
Okay, so
it's almost dinner time.
Yeah, in fact, I had this last night, venison cube steak. I am a hunter, a fisher woman. I like everything outdoors. I eat a lot of wild game, but venison pairs nicely with this wine. And I don't want to make you guys laugh, but my go-to sweet treat with this is a Snickers. Bite-sized Snickers. You get everything. I mean, it is so good with the cab. You get the chocolate, you get the nougat and the caramel and the nuttiness. I mean, instead of like making a dessert and spending a lot of time, I do like to bake too. But if you got just a Snickers on handy, it goes nicely.
I think red wine and dessert pairings are kind of rare because sometimes the earth overpowers, but I think that this is one of those where you get the chocolatey oaky notes that go great with the caramel. And then of course, the one thing that comes to mind for me is like a chocolate lava cake with like a raspberry gastrique or something. You get both the sweet from the chocolate, but like a really tart note from some sort of fruit note as well. That's my go-to, but I don't think I could make that at home. So I think I might go for a Snickers instead.
Oh, you totally could. Yeah.
One more question. It was, do you have a favorite vintage? Maybe not just because of the end result, but the story behind it.
Ooh, you cut out on that first part. Can you say it again?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a little spotty. I'm sorry. I apologize.
No worries. Do you have a favorite vintage? And maybe not just because of the end result, but the story behind it.
This might be an interesting answer, but I'm going to say the 2020. Why?
A pandemic wine.
Yeah, it was a big year for a lot of people. But there was so much learning about smoke taint and wines, and something that we probably will have to deal with in the future. We might not have been picking and fermenting like normal, but it was such a bizarre year. in just pandemic aside, like not even touching on that, but the Central Coast was so highly affected by 3 different wildfires in the region, and it was really devastating. There was 6 weeks of smoke in the air, and my son's birthday we celebrated on August 23rd, and there was a glimmer. It was his first birthday. There was a glimmer of blue sky that like touched through the sky, and it was like, we have not seen blue sky in 6 weeks. Like, that's a long time. But you know, we did a lot of like bucket ferments. We read a lot of articles. We attended a lot of seminars online just to learn about smoke taint and the effects of it. I still don't feel like an expert by any means, and there's still a lot to learn, but you know, it was just a very bizarre vintage. So quality wise, you know, am I going off of that, like it produced quality wines? No. But aside from that, just learning so much and being so engulfed in like one aspect of the harvest, and mitigating and whether or not we were going to pick. There's just decisions going left and right, and one minute we were going to pick a vineyard, the next day we called it off. It was intense. So it was intense in a different way. You know, normally we're working 10, 12, 16-hour days or something like that, and you know, highly focused on these fermentations I was talking about. But this year it was focusing on where these fires were going and how close they were to a winery. We had to evacuate the winery at one point, and I can't remember how many days we weren't allowed back in, but because the fires were so close to us, and my boss and a couple other coworkers were, you know, like making sure everything was protected. So I would say 2020.
Wow. I feel like that could have been in, you know, greatest obstacles too, you know. We obviously hear about the wildfires, and we hear about anything that has to do with vintage variation, frosts in other areas, or, you know, having effects of global warming, for example, as well. So to be able to see, especially when you talk about vintages that may be considered poor vintages or wildfire vintages, it is really about every little tiny decision that gets made. And one of my favorite things to say when, especially working in restaurants, is people will say, oh, 2011, that wasn't a really good vintage. And there are great wines that come from bad vintages. So I think it's always hard to write off a complete, you know, whole vintage. But if you have your winemakers that you know and trust, and you know that there is all this research and all of these micro decisions, all of these tiny little things that go into making this end product, you can still trust that there is going to be a sense of quality, even in a wildfire vintage or a bad vintage in general, rainy vintages or hot vintages.
Yeah, and we have to remember it's all subjective too. I mean, it truly is. You know, I can say what I feel about this wine, and you can say what you feel, taste, smell, perceive, and they can be completely opposite. So not opposed to anybody's opinion.
Do you have to deal with frost at all, or?
I saw that question. We have, was it 2017? In particular, some cab grapes hung on a little bit longer. They took a little bit longer to mature, and we were in risk of frost. One vineyard did get frosted out. We did a whole bunch of mitigation and leaf blowing and hand picking, and we still had a bit of rose taint in the end, you know. And as a winemaker, it's something you have to deal with, and you find ways to work with it. There are a couple vineyard sites that have some like low dips in them. So like if you're getting into like late October, you like that dip might be in jeopardy. We just fingers crossed a lot of times that
hope for the best.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to have a pretty, as a whole, a really good growing um, area here with, mild to moderate climate as a whole. Nothing's too extreme. Though there was snow on these peaks outside here, what, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, you know?
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, it is good to know that your vineyards are in good hands and that there's so many people that, are making these decisions, and you're not alone making them as well. And we love to see the final product. Obviously, it's times like now that we recognize everything that goes into this final product is not just a mass-produced wine, is all of these things, all these different vineyards that they're coming from, and the people that take care of them, and all the decisions that go into making the final product is incredible, because we just see the final product. So it's kind of just like, oh, here it is.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And that's something that I want to thank you for pointing out, is that, it's not just one person behind these wines. It's really a winery team. And, you have your grape growers, your viticulturists, and sure, there might be some winemaking involved in the picking, but you have the tractor drivers that put it in the gondolas. You have the crane operators. You have the many cellar workers that do all the labor. You have the bottling line crew, and a lot of people in between that I haven't even mentioned. So there's a lot of hands that are behind this, and it's something really unique and special.
There was just a question about staffing. So staffing for harvest, different sites, and then I would also add in with the pandemic, especially.
I just want to say that I'm fortunate that people are still drinking wine. One of the decisions that brought me to wine was the fact that it was a stable industry. Like, let that sink in. When, 12 years ago, 15, I don't know. In fact, I just watched my Cal Poly graduation this morning. Sorry. Little personal note there. But anyways, I was saying that, oh gosh, what was I saying? Oh,
staffing.
Oh, so very thankful that people are drinking wine, that this is a stable industry. We haven't had to lay anybody off, which is incredible. Thank you, Han Family Wines. Our vineyard team and the people that are in the vineyards are managed by a contracted company. I haven't heard of any issues with labor. I'm not sure I'm the right person to really answer that, though. But from what I can see, no, we haven't had any shortage in people to prune or tractor drivers. Or even our staffing, our bottling line. We haven't had any downtime, due to not being able to be staffed. So
that's great to hear, especially because, our industry especially has been affected, but to see, there is a bright side, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that wine still does need to be made at the end of the day. And there's people that are here happy to drink it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. And
yeah, this was such a fun interview, and it was great to have everybody participating and asking questions. I'm like kind of sad because this is the very last Women in Wine for Women's History Month event, but it has been so wonderful being able to meet people like Megan and meet all of our wonderful Marianos and even extended family, people from all over the place too, all of our customers. And I just wanted to say thank you all for tuning in, and I'm sure we're going to have quite a few more wine events in the future. So cheers to that, and cheers to Women's Month. Thank you so much.
Cheers. And I just wanted to add, oh, sorry, Megan, go ahead.
Oh, you first.
I just wanted to really thank everyone. And since we are celebrating Women's Month, I want to thank Lindsay Johnson and Sarah Oliveric from Mariano's for helping make all of this happen all the time. And our two tastemakers, Cassie tonight and also Belinda Chang. And we have to give Cassie a big round of applause because she has she got a great new awesome job for the Gibson's Restaurant Group.
Oh,
She's the wine director. So when everyone's in Chicago, we can go visit Cassie at the Gibson's Group. I'm sure she'll be at all the restaurants, but it's very exciting, Cassie and Lindsay and Sarah. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. It has been a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.
Oh, and Megan, I found candy, Megan, to go with the wine. And you're right.
Oh my God, s'mores.
We just started selling these at the stores. It's Fannie Mae s'more snack mix. And I mean, literally it's like a little mini s'more, but I was like, oh, that's going to go great with this wine. And it does. So thank you for that.
Now I need to rummage my cupboard for
now
chocolate.
I have my dinner right here.
Yeah. Don't turn on the oven.
Not tonight. No, I'm kidding.
All right. Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much. Take care.
Cheers.